Hello, it's me, God's Comic Brad Stein, and this is Brad Stein Has Issues, where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. That's right, it is a Thursday, a little confusing. Everybody's confused. I see people out there. We didn't even get a chance to get dressed. We're still in our jammies because you didn't expect a Thursday night podcast. Why? We sprung it on you because that's what we do. Why? Because we have a very special guest, an exclusive interview with author and incredible podcast host, radio host, Eric Metaxas, who wrote this book that changed the lives of many Christians worldwide, but also his life, Bonhoeffer, pastor, martyr, prophet, spy. Why are we having this discussion? You guys have seen Eric on the show before, because this book has been turned into a movie that's going to be launching here in Thanksgiving next week, and we are going to help get the message out that this must be watched, because it took him forever to make a book that big. It's now turned into a movie, and so our good friend Eric Metaxas is really moving into the major leagues with the type of material he puts out. Now, this is much different than, for example, my son Wyatt Stein, who's still in the minor leagues, and I think is a bat boy, as a matter of fact. Hasn't even got on the team yet. Why? What happened to that?
I don't know, but you're not necessarily a major leaguer either. You've written some books. Like, I can see one right now. But, you know, nothing as big as the one you've got there. How long do you think it would have taken him to write a book that big?
You know what? It took him I don't know if it took him months or a year, but part of the interview that we're about to have with him, and by the way, we haven't had it yet, so this is kind of a behind the scenes.
Yeah. We're kind of banking on the interview going the way we think it will.
Exactly.
But you know.
Or that he even shows up for the interview. That's
I mean, if something goes wrong, then at least the podcast's name's right.
Yeah,
at least we got that for us.
Got the proper title, and we can just say that we'll just say that Eric was here in spirit.
Yeah, in spirit.
I'm going to bring something up, and I'm just going to give you guys who watch on this Thursday. And if you're brand new to Brad Stein Has Issues, you're not one of the normals, the Monday night crowd that shows up at 7 o'clock Central Standard every Monday night. And though I guarantee you, Wyatt, some of them are going to be here. Who would you guess? If you had to roll the dice and you had to pick
Nick
three...
Kress.
Nick will be here. He'll know. Who else will show up?
Colin, maybe?
Colin Boyd, yeah. I'll bet you. And?
Bushwhackle.
Maybe. I was thinking Ashley Haas.
I was thinking too, but I thought that was too obvious. You know, I wanted to branch out to
Yes.
Other people who would probably show up.
Yeah, and we might get all of our people who are going to be confused and scratching their head going, what in the heck is going on?
I sent a newsletter, and I think they may have possibly gotten it, assuming it didn't go straight to their junk mail folder.
Do you think that junk mail folders, how do they know? If you subscribe to an email, why wouldn't it go to you? You subscribed.
I think it's one of those things where, you can set it up so that anything that's not from an email address that you've, whitelisted is just automatically sent there. Okay. But I honestly think that the junk mail folder is, you're solving the wrong problem.
Yeah.
The problem is that there was a bunch of junk mail going around. And their proposed solution is to have a folder that keeps all that nonsense just piled up. Wouldn't it be a better solution to just get rid of the junk mail so it never gets sent in the first place?
Well, don't they have a delete button for the junk mail? So it's
they
almost
do, but you know what's an even more effective way of deleting junk mail?
No.
Never sending it out in the first place.
Well, it's funny.
Why isn't there legislation don't waste people's time?
Well, yeah.
I mean, think about it. Think of how many people were do you remember back in the day where grocery stores were promoting plastic bags because they saved trees?
Mm.
Well, who's out there advocating for the virtual trees that die every time you print out you email yourself a letter? Seriously.
Or what about the Lego trees that are made of plastic? Are they just to be acknowledged? Are they just...
Okay, but to be fair, that's actually a good point. I think there may actually be more Lego trees than real trees.
Yeah.
I know it's that way for tiles, which is insane.
There's more tiles than
Yeah,
what?
tiles. You know, the thing that makes your car go.
Oh, tires.
Yes. Yeah.
There's more tires than trees?
No, there's more Lego tiles than real life tiles. I think it's also the same thing with doors too.
Well, that's
Basically, any object you can make in Legos, there's probably at least an order of magnitude more than the one in real life.
But I think we just used our noggins here for a second. One of the reasons there's so many Lego tires around is because they don't get punctured. They don't go bad. They don't wear down where we have to dump.
I mean, yeah. And like some equipment, like forklifts, use solid rubber tires, no air in them.
Right.
So that they can't be punctured.
Right.
I think the reason they don't do that normally is because of fuel efficiency. Like the cushion of air the tire like rides on sort of makes it more fuel efficient. That being said, I would rather just have the solid tire, if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you.
What if you were able to recycle ruined tires into fuel so that you could use those to motivate the cars that have new tires on?
That could work. But honestly, fuel as a concept has always like interested me because if you name pretty much any form of energy production, not like pretty much every single one of them is just a fancier and fancier way of boiling water. That is basically where energy comes from. It's some way of boiling water so the steam can turn a turbine. Like even stinking nuclear like fission, I believe, like nuclear power plants.
Yeah.
That's all they use it for. It's just boiling water. It's ridiculous. No, I'm not kidding.
I think the water keeps them cool.
No. That's separate water. That's the coolant water, not the energy producing water.
So you're trying to tell me that every coal burning power plant, electrical power plant, is created by steam?
The main concept is that it's just using steam to turn a turbine. I think I'm gonna look this up because I don't want to spread false information on the internet.
No,
Whoever thought of that?
Well, that doesn't make any sense because
I know it doesn't make any sense.
Because like if you're burning fuel, okay, so the original steamboats was coal, right, shoveled into a thing like a train, shoveled into a burner, and it was doing water for steam. Everything is steam. That doesn't sound right.
No, well, it apparently, according to my intuition, it's because using steam to turn a turbine is the most efficient way to convert heat energy into electrical energy.
Okay, but when we ride in our cars, we're exploding fuel that forces.
Exactly, that's an explosion. That's not electricity. That's an explosion. Power plants don't carry bombs every 2 seconds. You don't plug in your vacuum and it explodes every 2 nanoseconds. It's electricity. That's a different thing.
Okay. So it's all steam.
It's all steam. That's it. The only things that aren't steam is like solar power. But even then, I'm pretty sure they still... No. Solar power is straight electricity. And wind power, I guess. But wind power hurts birds, so,
But even solar is using water, heat and water, right?
No. I think it's photovoltaic. It's literally converting light directly into electricity.
Oh, solar voltaic. You know
No,
what that
photovoltaic. Solar voltaic is what people say when they think they know how it works.
Right. Well, I was thinking about this. You'd said something earlier that I think was interesting and ironic because just a couple days. Have you ever seen any of my daily brads? There are these brilliant, off-the-cuff daily devotions that change the world one day at a time. I have people
Seen them. I edit
making
them.
pilgrimages to try to watch me walk and make these. It's funny. You see them hiding through bushes, and I'll walk past because I do it while I'm walking, and you'll see this.
Wait. Is that like a pair of binoculars or like a pair of cartoon eyes peeking through the bush?
They're pulling the bush. Oh, there he is.
Here we have the bloodstein in his natural habitat.
In his natural habitat. Okay, quick, fade into black. Well, anyways, just a couple days ago, I made a point that as I was walking the neighborhood, in our neighborhood, it has big, giant mailboxes. Like, we got big, giant mailboxes. And I was thinking to myself, do you remember the other day we were talking about how nobody has a landline anymore, right?
Oh yeah, that was one of my favorite conversations we had.
Okay. So think of this. So for the most part, we used to communicate through the mail, right? You went to the U.S. Post Office and you got your mail and you sent your mail. Well,
Yeah.
nowadays when I go get the mail, and it's funny about the mailbox, it's like magic. It's empty, and then eventually that afternoon you walk in and you pull that little door and there's just magical gifts in there.
Okay, it may be magic, but let's be honest here. 1 to 2 business days is pretty slow for a magic trick.
It's slow, but it still works. It does appear from nowhere.
I'm just saying, there's not much of an audience that's going to stick around that long unless you pay them.
But see, and here's the difference between one of the many differences between you and I is that my age, when I was, you're 28, so that would have been 1980. So for the most part, at least in my teens and earlier, we communicated by the mail. If you wanted to contact your friend or sibling or parent that lived in another state, you sent them a letter. Wyatt. Matter of fact, before we could afford, or you could call on the phone, Wyatt, you had to do long distance. It was very expensive. And we used to actually, when I was really young, we would talk to each other in a tape recorder, in a tape. And we would say, hey, how you doing? Today's January 7th. I'm doing this. And hey, I went to the baseball game. I did this. And yeah, my school's doing good. And I would just say it in a tape, and we would mail that to them so they could listen to us talk and kind of fill them in on where we were, but you didn't have to spend the money on the long distance. So I grew up where you went to the mailbox and you couldn't wait to see that letter from somebody that you had been waiting for, or maybe a gift. And, you get your cards in the mail, and it's exciting. It's like somebody's bringing you this, this special magical thing that you didn't expect. But here's what I've noticed, that nowadays, other than sort of these Amazon things or certain particular things you try to get, and a bill, but so much is done online now that for the most part, the bulk of, if not 3/4 of the mail that is brought to your mailbox every day, Wyatt, is junk mail. And just like we had talked about junk email, right? You said they should be.
Wait. 3/4?
Easy. Most of it is some realtor sending you a thing. Somebody wants to have you contact them for this or that. But here's the thing that's interesting me. So we take it out. I bring it in the house. Your mom cuts it up because she doesn't want anybody to have our address. She's just worried somehow my identity is going to be stolen. So she cuts out our address, even though you can find a Google search, you'll find basically anybody's phone number. But here's my point, son. Every day I walk out to the mailbox and literally open up mail that his only purpose is I'm going to throw it away. So somebody spends money to send literal trash through the mail so that I can take it out of my mailbox so that I can bring it to my trash can and throw it in there, where that is brought out to trash men who come and spend money and time and gas to dump my trash. That's taken to a dump, and that is put into a landfill, all because somebody literally mailed me trash.
It's almost as if the Postal Service has found a way to socialize garbage collection. Instead of one person having it, everyone has the trash.
But that's my point, is that junk mail that we talk about on email literally came from what the physical, actual, literal junk mail.
Okay, who invented junk mail? I need to know, because I have to send them a very sternly worded letter that will no doubt wind up in the trash.
Well, but here's the thing. One man's junk is another man's treasure. So
yeah?
so-
Really? So whose treasure is junk mail?
So junk mail, if you think about it, is somebody doing advertisement. Basically, it's a billboard that ends up in your
Honestly,
front yard.
I would disagree. I don't think the definition of junk mail should be simply setting an advert. I think junk mail should be defined as sending adverts that have a low to no probability of anyone actually jumping on. Because you can send an effective advert. Like, it's possible to, like... Because there are famous commercials advertising a product. They are literally well known and will probably continue to be for years. I wouldn't consider that like a junk commercial because it's effective. I think the junk part is less about the fact that it's an advertisement. It's more the fact that it's an ineffective advertisement. It's just piling up because nobody cares about it.
Okay. Well, it's all a numbers game because for the most part, I kind of glance through it and get ready to throw it away. Once in a blue moon, you might think, oh, I need a guy that cleans my gutters, or I need a guy that does the pavement sealant or something like that. So it's a numbers game. It might cost them, I don't know, 10 cents a card. And let's say they put out 100,000 cards.
Yeah.
And that ends up being, what is that? Is that 10 grand? But out of that 100,000, if they just got 1% of people that bought their product, that's 1,000, right?
Yeah.
1,000 customers. And if their average fee is, $500, $600, $700, let's say 500, then that's
half a million.
$500,000 you made.
Yeah, but that's
for
a big...
your junk. So they're just throwing it out there saying, I don't care if you throw it away. This guy's going to throw it. He's going to throw it. He's going to. It's like sales. Sales is no, 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 yes. No, 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 yes. And those yeses make up for the no's.
I kind of get that, but I think you are severely overestimating how many people actually follow through on junk mail. There's a reason they had to invent a freaking default email function to get rid of it. Because nobody wants it.
Nobody wants it.
No, but I understand the whole numbers game argument, but I just don't think the numbers are there. And by the way, I found the guy.
Ooh.
I found him.
Who is it?
I can't pronounce his last name. It's Thuerk. How would you pronounce it? Thuerk.
Thuerk?
Gary Thuerk is considered the inventor of junk mail in 1978.
Okay, and
You have him to blame
but what?
for the deforestation of America.
Okay, but what is junk mail? What did he think he created that nobody thought of before?
The first unsolicited mass emailing campaign in history.
Email?
Oh, email. So he's only the inventor of
Email
junk mail. Oh, I see.
Wait a minute. 78, Wyatt. There were no personal computers in 1978.
Oh no, it was ARPANET, which was the precursor to the internet.
Okay.
Yeah, before it was the internet, it was called ARPANET, and I think it was mostly again, it was the predecessor. It wasn't quite up to standards.
Okay. I dated a girl in 1978, 79, and her dad was an engineer. And I would go he used to read. Every time I saw him, he was reading a book. That was what he would do at night. He would sit there and read. And then they came out with this idea called a personal computer. I think it was called an Apple I. And you literally had like a TV screen and this components you did and your own little and this guy had the first, like the Apple I or whatever they call it, the original one. I remember him getting it, and then he would sit there. Of course, you had to do codes to find crap. I mean, this was serious. Now, it wasn't just, there was no copy paste. But this guy had, and I remember thinking, who would want to do that? Why would you want that? It's very complicated. You got to be an engineer. You're taking nerd to a whole new level. But I watched a guy with the original computer world jump in. So that went around 1980. Isn't that when Apple kind of launched the first PC? Do you remember?
Around that time, yeah. Wasn't it the Macintosh they sent out?
Yeah. So anyways, so that's what, but I remember a guy having one of those and just thinking, well, this isn't going to go. I know I'm never going to be interested because I don't know how to, and it was all the green screen and you push the things and makes all the letters in white and, it was the original old school computers that you kind of needed to know how to kind of
code they have
properly.
definitely made it easier. Back then,
Lord.
if you didn't know how to code, you could not use a computer.
Or at least follow the directions as to how you went about doing
I mean, they
this.
probably had manuals, though, for those things, right? Like, they'd have to have, because nobody
course.
had ever seen that before. Nobody would intuitively know, oh, that's how I turn it on.
Yeah.
That's how I click stuff.
Yeah.
They had to have had a manual of something.
Yeah, and there was no mouse yet. It was all on
It was a rodent.
pad or whatever.
They hadn't come up with the name yet. It was a rodent.
Yeah, I believe gerbil. If I remember now, I think it was a gerbil. And they played with it, they toyed with it until they finally said, mouse, I think sounds cuter, sweeter, tinier, smaller, and leaves less debris behind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because little mouse poops are tiny. They're easy to clean up, Wyatt. And it makes me wonder though about the world that we live in and how we watch technology grow and we watch things change, even in our own lifetime. Think about.
I mean, not to go too off topic, but I did want to clarify. Apparently, the inventor of post office junk mail, the mail stuff, same guy who invented vapor rub, Lunsford Richardson.
Okay.
It's interesting, but also I discovered as I was searching. Do you know why they call email, like junk email, spam email? Do you think you know?
I guess because everybody has spam, but nobody likes it.
All right, here's a little hint for you. Lovely spam, wonderful spam.
Yeah.
That sketch is why it's called spam.
What? The Monty Python.
The Monty
spam?
Python spam sketch. Yeah, that is why it's called spam, because it was quote the name is ubiquitous, unavoidable, and repetitive. Which, if that ain't junk mail, man, I don't know what is.
Well, the whole point was I don't like spam. Well, we have spam and egg spam and hot dog spam and spam and cotton tea and spam and spam. I don't like spam. And we have spam and spam. So the idea of you're going to get this whether you like it or not, you're getting spam.
Look, I just think we need to give Monty Python way more credit for inventing way more things than I thought they did.
You know what? I would love to talk to a Monty Python person.
There were still a few of them left, right? I think. Still a problem?
I was looking for a book. Let me see if I can find it.
All right.
So this is called Lady Cottonton's Presents Fairy Book. And it's sort of these fairy getting smashed in the pages of the book and all this weird artwork and odd, like just... Anyways, the reason I bring it up, Wyatt, is your mom had a friend who was in marketing, and so she met different people. And this was Terry Jones, who I don't know if he wrote this book or if he was the writer, publisher, but anyways, Terry, you know Terry Jones, right?
I think was he the one who did all of the like animations?
No, that was Terry Gilliam.
Oh, okay.
But anyways, right here, signed is Terry Jones. It's written to your mom. Hi, fabulous Des, from your great fan, Terry Jones, L.A., 1994. So Terry Jones was the guy that played, let's see, in the witch sketch, he played the smart guy that kept lifting up his... his thing.
Lancelot, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't Lancelot.
Was
He
it-
played
wasn't
this.
Lancelot? That
He was
was,
the guy that tried to tell the guys, well, you know, what weighs more, a witch
Who,
or...
that was if it wasn't Lancelot, was it Galaham? I forget who he like. I know who you're talking about. I don't remember what his name
Anyways,
was. in
that
the
was
show.
Terry Jones, and so
Interesting.
he played different characters. And I'm trying to think of one other famous character. Perhaps you'd remember him from. Anyways, that's him. That's his signature. So I do have less than 7 degrees of separation from Monty Python. 2 of them are gone. He's one of them. He's passed away recent, maybe a year or so ago. The first one to go was Graham Chapman, who played Brian in Life of Brian, and also King Arthur. He died a long time ago. So those are 2 gone. The left, all they have left is John Cleese, Eric Idle, Terry Gilliam, and he was like my favorite guy. I just blanked on. Michael Palin. So that's the 4 Pythons that are still left, and you want to be the last guy because they roast the crap out of each other at their funerals. There is one of the things that at Graham Chapman's when he died, Cleese gets up to do his obituary and he says, you know, as someone who was known in England, first one to use say the S word, S-H-I-T, on television, I also want to be known as the first one at a funeral that uses the word muck. But of course, he said the other word. So he said that at his funeral. I'm going to be the first one who uses this word at a funeral. And they're all laughing out in the audience. So, you know, these guys are pretty innovative, and I'd love to meet one. I'd love to talk to John Cleese. He's pretty active on Twitter, but he seems to be really progressive leftist. It really surprised me because I've seen him go on and talk a lot against political correctness and the censoring of comedians. So I thought he'd be a little more at least balanced or a little bit more middle of the road, but he was real anti-Trump, real just sort of mocking people that wanted to vote for him. Kind of shocked me. I just didn't expect it from him. So it really kind of saddened me because, but Wyatt, if you were to pick, let's say, a top 3 bucket list of a guest, if you could pick 3 living people that we could get on this show, who would you want?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a very good question. If I can get 3 people.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously there's millions I'd love to have, but like if I could just sort of literally pick 3 and they would come on, I would definitely want Ricky Gervais just because he's an atheist, but he's such a great comedian writer, and I would just like to talk to him about his faith, but also, his lack of faith, but also just his ability to write and do comedy. He'd be amazing. And you know, I'd have to think about it too, like a bucket list worth of folks. But there's a lot of people that I've wanted that I've actually had on. Stephen Meyer, I've had, and then I went ahead and got to interview him for a second time. That hasn't aired yet, so that was exciting to me. But can you think of anybody that you wish
Is Neil Armstrong or one of those astronauts still alive? Do you know?
Buzz Aldrin's still alive?
Buzz Aldrin would be a good one to have our mom sit in on as well.
Smoke.
And just imagine the ratings we'd get on that episode.
Oh, my Lord, that would just be a train wreck, would it not? Or
I don't know. I genuinely do not know what would happen. And that's kind of why I want to see it.
Well, you wouldn't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out what's going to happen, Wyatt.
Are we talking Challenger or...
Exactly. Well, listen, for those who don't know, my wife tends to lean conspiracy.
Lean? That's one word for it.
If you came up on a well that said conspiracy over it, and you looked way down in it and you heard somebody deep, deep inside calling for help, that's my wife.
And the only help she's asking for is another shovel.
That's right. I've got further in this rabbit hole to dig. But I've been thinking about bringing her on, White, and giving her a
Segment?
A segment, conspiracy corner, conspiracy, crazy crap from Des. I don't know.
We may need to workshop the name.
We'll figure something out. But I think she'd be a funny asset, but she'd also stand for her thing. And it's like, it just could be interesting. It could be, or it could go way sideways.
Then again, you do realize what podcast we're running, right? Maybe that's a win-win.
It could be. Yeah, that's true. Maybe it'd just be, I would expect nothing less from you guys. Well, listen, when I started the episode out, and when I came up and you showed me, I had this face right here in front of me, and this is a Dietrich Bonhoeffer. For those who don't know, and if you're a Christ follower, I would be shocked you don't know who this man was. He was a pastor, and he was in Germany, and he was there during the Third Reich. He was there when Hitler took power. And as a Christian, he looked at what was happening to the Jews, and he said, this is evil, this is wrong, we've got to stop it. And the commitment he made to stop this, and the choices he made as to how he wanted to go about trying to stop this crazy, is really interesting, because he's a Christian, and he wanted and believed that Hitler should be assassinated. He needed him removed. He thought he was so evil. And it's a Christian guy who participated in trying an assassination attempt against Adolf Hitler. It cost him his life. He ended up in a concentration camp, by the way, that I visited when I was in Germany. And I literally, the spot where he was hung, I visited. As a matter of fact, I need to send that photo to you guys so you can insert that right now at this spot. But anyways, this is, in this day and age where Christians are trying to discover, where do we belong in the political sphere? Where do we belong in the culture? How important is it for us to decide as to what we believe our faith should have to do with affecting the culture, redeeming it, healing it, directing it, guiding it, giving it a moral foundation? That's what your faith is for, is to give truth and reality to a culture that's confused and that is going in directions without any guardrails whatsoever. And to think that some people have taken it to extremes that we would probably never even considered is going to make for quite a conversation with the author, Eric Metaxas, of the book Bonhoeffer, which is now a movie coming out that he, of course, is a participant in. Now, Eric has been a vocal supporter of Donald Trump and is kind of getting into their circle a little bit. So I want to talk to him about his thoughts on him, on Donald Trump. Is he a believer? Is he real? Is he legit? Is this a scam? Is he a politician? Is he just getting what he wants? And this whole thing is a giant scam of people just wanting power. I don't know. I don't even know if he knows, but we can ask him. I want to know about Bonhoeffer. I want to know about who he was, what a man he was, how his world around Nazi Germany was very similar to what has been happening in the West and in the United States in the last number of years when it comes to wokeism, when it comes to identity politics, when it comes to totalitarians stifling the thoughts and the dissent of other people, to the effect that people are imprisoned or killed. This is where the West is heading. It's where Europe is heading. They're already putting people in prison for tweets and for Facebook posts. People are going to jail. Doesn't matter if a guy killed somebody. If he was an immigrant, we're going to leave him alone. He's oppressed. But the guy that said, why are we doing this? They literally are going to their homes and arresting him. I mean, Europe is England has lost its mind. It's such a disgrace to the West because it used to be such a beacon of intellectual hope and standards. And so I I care about my nation. On the day before November 5, the day before the election, where we said, I was with Rick Green, who's America's Constitution coach, where are we going? What's going to happen to this nation? What's going to happen tomorrow? I don't know. God's in control. But I know that the oppression and the persecution that's happening worldwide to Christians, which we just had, Open Doors, president and CEO, who defends persecuted Christians worldwide, was just on 2 days ago on Monday. You can still see clips of that and go watch that show. But it's all coming here in the United States. It's coming to Canada with their totalitarian lunatic Trudeau. And certainly just riddled in Europe, in Scotland, in Ireland, in England. Horrific. And so it matters because why shouldn't the Christian be involved in what's happening to a culture if the culture is going to hell? Isn't that the point? I want you to know the gospel, the good news, the truth. I want you to be able to know what it means to stand for things and stand alone. We all want to be warriors, but when it comes to actually doing it, where you might be the only one there saying this is immoral and it's going to cost you everything, suddenly you shirk away. Well, you're not courageous. You're a coward. You're not saying the emperor is naked. You're joining the rest of the crowd saying he's got a beautiful suit there. It's gorgeous. You're a coward. You're a fraud. It doesn't work like that. You have to be a disciple for Christ. You can't call yourself a Christian. That's irrelevant. The word Christian was an insult when it was first given to people. They called themselves the way, followers of the way. That's what the original church called themselves. And then when Jesus left, he says, go into the world and make Christians? Nah. Believers? Make disciples. Turn people into such committed, supernaturally, naturally living humans that the world is changed in their presence, that their very shadow walks across an area and it's changed because God has redeemed us. God has sanctified us. We've done nothing to deserve it. All we did was humble ourselves and say, we're not good enough for God's holy space. Christ's blood is the prism he sees me through. I'm now perfected because of that. God became man. It's unbelievable. It's the story of all stories. It's the true myth. It's the greatest story ever told. It is, in fact, the only hope for human race is to return. And certainly in America, this reprieve he has given to us with Donald Trump, if he turns out to be legit and really does the things he wants to do and tries to restore free speech and religious liberties and defend this nation, if he really does that, then we've been given a reprieve, which means the church must double down in finally saying we will stand for religious liberties, we will stand for moral behavior, sexual deviancy will not be spoken of in any kind of value, but as a detriment to society and a shame to God. We need to stand for truth. We need to defend children from being mutilated and the sexual trade that's happening with the open borders and all the children that are being sexually sold into slavery. This evil, demonic evil must be destroyed, and Christians should be at the spearhead of that. Well, this man did it, and he did it in real time, and it cost him his entire life. And the man that took time to write this incredible book, Bonhoeffer, Pastor, Martyr, Prophet, and Spy, Eric Metaxas, I'm privileged to say, an old friend of mine. We are now going to interview, and you are going to be able to hear the insight of who this man Bonhoeffer was, what this movie is, and why you need to go see it and support it so that this truth gets into the atmosphere, and why we as Christians have marching orders to take our cues from men that have done it all and sacrificed it all and bring that into our country and fight as though there is nothing left at stake but Christ's name being lifted up. That's where we are. So, folks, enjoy, listen to, and soberly prepare to become a different human, a disciple for Christ. After this interview with God's comic, Brad Stein, and author, host, and my good friend, Eric Metaxas. Folks, when I do Brad Stein has issues, I got to tell you something. I am so sort of mind boggled the amount of people I've been able to talk to in my life starting this podcast. And it's interesting because I can be selfish. Sometimes I bring people on that I want to talk to. I don't care about you guys. You're just going to have to listen in. But oftentimes it is people that I'm sure you will be inspired by. Why else would I bring them on? As long as they're speaking the truth. I don't care if it's an atheist. I don't care who it is. If it's truth, it's God's. And I think the more we can get life's perspectives through God, through the unorthodox ways that he communicates, the better we all can be in the long run. And so I've been able to say things like this next guest is somebody that I've always wanted to have on, and this particular guest fits that category. I can say this next guest is much smarter than me, and he fits that category. I can say this next guest is has been profoundly impacting the culture in a Christ-like way, is talented, is gifted, and in somebody that I deeply respect. All of those things are true about this next guest. But I get to add one little caveat to this guy that I virtually can never use for anybody else. I have the privilege and the pleasure to also say he's my friend. And that means as much as anything to me. We have been through a lot together in watching the culture spiral. And who knows, maybe now, rebound. Jury's still out, but who isn't still out, except for his travels to Dallas, is my author, podcast host, television host, radio host, bon vivant, Renaissance man, Eric Metaxas. How do you do, my friend?
Holy cow. Listen, I hate to break it to you on the air, but you can't call me your friend. That's a bridge too far, bro. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Dang
I
it.
gotta contradict you right out of the gate. That's wrong. I would say maybe I'll go with acquaintance. Okay.
Listen, I put it in my writer that that everybody I bring on has to say they're my friend. And so I'm shocked that you were the one that read the fine print. And
No, let me take that back. Technically, we're friends. We spent a lot of time together. We've hung out a lot. So, all right, I'm going to go with friend. Listen, you're fun to talk to. You're always fun to talk to. I've been on here with you other times. I don't remember when, but we've been on here. But this is kind of a big announcement today.
Yeah.
I don't know if we should say this out of the gate. Should we say it out of the gate, or you want to get to it eventually?
well, I got to be honest with you. I can't afford a gate on my podcast. I'm not a big shot like you, but yeah, if you feel like this, if you want to just sort of go ahead and just commandeer my show, you tell me what you want to talk about. Go ahead and release the
I want
hounds.
to talk about one thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to talk about many things, but the most important thing for sure,
Let them have it.
that my Bonhoeffer book came out in 2010, and some people were inspired to make a movie. There it is. And some people were inspired to make a movie, and it took them 12 years. And the movie's out tomorrow. In fact, a friend of mine just texted me they saw it today in a theater, but it's out tomorrow, Friday, officially Friday. And the film is fantastic. Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I've seen it 3 times. I saw different versions of it while they were, trying to get the final version. It's absolutely fantastic. And I want to say to your audience, please see it this weekend. It is a great film, and it's a mainstream film. It's not like a Christian film. Well, I can't bring my neighbors. No, this is like a totally mainstream film. It's absolutely awesome. And it's so good that the unhinged progressive liberal lunatics are already attacking it. Like Jesus is too central in it. So it's like an unhinged them, and they're attacking it. And Christianity today, which has gone over to the dark side, in case anybody still thinks like that's a good, they went over to the dark side like about 8 years ago, and they've gotten worse and worse and worse. And they wrote this scathing, insane review that I actually laughed. I was reading parts of it to my wife. I was like, wow. That, when some people, it's like the Trump derangement syndrome. They're just so upset.
This was against your book?
No. This is what's so funny. It's a great film, but just because I wrote a book on Bonhoeffer, the knives are out, kind of, like the knives are out. So it makes no sense. It's utterly unhinged. It's like if The View did a review of the Bonhoeffer film. Like, what are you
Yeah.
gonna?
Oh,
You don't.
I got you. I got you. I
You
got you.
just
Well,
have to laugh because it makes no sense. But like so many people have seen the film and raved about it. People,
yeah.
and I'll be honest with you, when you're really close to something, I mean, the film is not officially based on my book, but obviously, if there's a film about Bonhoeffer, I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
And the people who made it were inspired by my book 14 years ago, whatever it was. And it is a truly, Brad, you know me, I'm a friend. It is a great film. It's an amazing film. And I think to make a mainstream film, not like a Christian film just for Christians, but like a mainstream film that you could take any neighbor, any friend, any your relative who doesn't see eye to eye with you politically, you could bring anybody to this film and they're going to love it because it's just a great film about a hero. I am so excited. So that's the headline. And I'll say this because I know this is true. When a film comes out, the way the business works, if it doesn't do killer in the opening weekend, theaters start shutting down second week, third week. They're already looking for the next thing. So I'm telling everybody, please see it this weekend.
Yes.
Please see it this weekend. And listen, the great news is you're going to love it. Whoever you bring is going to be like, thank you. I didn't know they made films like this. It's awesome.
Well, I agree. I concur. And folks, just like a couple weeks ago when I had Dinesh D'Souza on, and I was in a co-star in a movie he made called Vindicating Trump, and it was the same thing. I said, guys, you got to go to the first weekend because that kind of establishes that there's interest here. I mean, there's only so many theaters to go around. There's only so many films to go around, and the point is, frankly, the theaters don't care about. I don't think the point of view as much as is this going to make us any money? Because
Yeah.
that they're in the business to make money. I mean, when you got to sell popcorn for $614, you're either really like the margins are really weak in the theater business, or you're just you're sharing time with the internet. You're sharing time with downloads. You're sharing time with streaming. I mean, the
Yeah.
theater business isn't this isn't 1939 Gone with the Wind premiere at
Yeah.
Grauman's. This is a whole new world, and so
Yeah.
it's crucial. And it's funny too, Eric, because I remember two things. I just was thinking about that when you were speaking about how you have been treated. In 2004, after the New Yorker article came out about me, which I think is where you first heard about me, when we first kind of got to know each other, when I was doing the Canaan Society, the New Canaan Society, when I came to perform, that's when we met. But I had a William Morris agent, and he basically handled a literary agent for conservatives, and I think he had Bill O'Reilly and guys like that too. And he said, just to let you know, your reviews are going to suck. They're going to kill you. When Ann Coulter puts it out, they'll kill the review. When what's his name, Limbaugh, they're going to kill him. When O'Reilly when Sean Hannity puts it, they're going to destroy. Meanwhile, you're going to sell a ton of books because everybody wants them, and conservatives care about this stuff. But I just want to let you know the lay of the land, and it's true. I mean, and this is 2004. This assault on freedom from people who happen to think as a conservative, as a patriot, as a foundational originalist, as far as seeing the Constitution as it was originally intended. That idea of what it was necessary to allow this country to go this long is lambasted and ridiculed because the institutions have, in fact, been taken over by the left. And so obviously they're not going to give us a fair shake. So what you're going through, in a way, is kind of like it's kind of like it's like a badge of honor. Basically, it's like Jesus
Yeah.
said, listen, if you want to know your mind, you can say you're a Christian or you go to church, but there's one perfect proof. They'll hate you for my sake. Then
Yeah.
you'll know you're one of mine, because that's how this game works. And also then just to see that Christians would always say to me as a comic and whatever, oh, come to Iowa. We want to see you, blah, blah, blah. And then you show up and they go, oh, not this weekend. Not this. Oh, this weekend. So everybody talks about how they want to help and support, but suddenly when they have to reach into their pockets and get out the money or get a
Yeah.
babysitter or show up, suddenly it's a little inconvenient. And folks, this little inconvenience that Christian Americans simply don't want to have to engage in is why we basically lost our nation. It's the cowardice, the foolishness, and the absolute just laziness of the American Christian that doesn't ever want his faith to cost him anything. But he sure wants you to make sure you have those doors open on Sundays and make sure there's a coffee waiting for me. So that nonsense is over, folks. We have been given a reprieve, I think, with this new administration for religious liberties, but hopefully for the church to get down on its knees and say, God Almighty,
And
I can't believe what you have done. Let us never shirk our duty to speak moral absolutes from the pulpit, and nothing would be a better segue into Bonhoeffer than that, because that is what this man's entire life was based on.
I mean, listen, this is people who see the film, you're going to see parallels to what we're going through today. He was trying to get the church to wake up to stand against evil. And they were like, nah, we're Romans 13. We don't want to get involved in politics. We just want to do church. You know, don't be such a hothead. It's amazing. I mean, when I wrote the book, I could sort of see this while I was writing the book. I said, this is weird. It feels like I'm writing about today. And that's back in 2008 when I wrote the book. It's become more and more and more true. It is intensely true right now. So it's going to provoke people, I think, in a good way. It's going to get you thinking about that people have lived through this before. And Brad, I got to say, this is a mainstream feature film. It's not a documentary. I mean, you and I are involved in, documentaries. We do stuff with Dinesh D'Souza. We did, that's really conservative and whatever. Of course, like that's awesome. But this is a mainstream feature film. It's like Chariots of Fire.
Yeah.
It's a $29 million budget. It's a big deal. And it was,
wow.
it was
By the way, I didn't know that.
It's a big deal. You'll see when you see it, you're going to be like, oh, this is a real film.
But Eric, isn't there something telling in the fact that we have to bend over backwards to try to convince Christians that we actually have a project out here that has sophistication to it? I mean,
that's because there's been a lot of kind of not so great films put out by.
That's my point. But why have we settled for that? Why have we accepted?
Well,
that?
look, it's not even worth getting into. All I can tell you is this film. I mean, I've been getting the feedback from friends and stuff, and they're not going to sugarcoat it. If they didn't love it, they're not going to rave about it just to fool me. People are loving it. And by the way, I don't know if you know who Lauren Daigle is. She's a Christian artist. Yeah. She wrote a song. This killed me. She read my Bonhoeffer book, like, I don't know, 10 years ago. I think her grandfather gave her a copy and she read it. And she was asked by the makers of the film, would you consider writing a song for the film? She wrote, now again, the film is not officially related to my book, but just because of her love of Bonhoeffer, she decided to write a song for the film. It is a great song. When I heard it, I go, this is big. It's not just Lauren Daigle. It's a great song by Lauren Daigle. And it's the closing credits. So people are going to be crying in the theaters when they are watching the closing credits.
I mean, I know your integrity, and obviously you wouldn't say that if it wasn't true. And it's always tricky when we're attached to something.
I was worried when they said she's going to write a song for it. I was like, well, what if it's not great? What if it's just average? It's great.
Exactly.
It's great.
Well, that's good news.
And the acting is great. The direction is great. I'll tell you, just to give you an idea of when I say it's a mainstream film, the editor of the film, and editing is a big deal. You got to get a good editor. The editor of the film is Clint Eastwood's editor. I forget, his first name is Blue something. I forget his last name, but he's a big deal. He's Clint Eastwood's editor. And the guy who wrote the film, Todd Komarnicki, he wrote the screenplay for Sully. So the guy who wrote the screenplay for this film and who directed this film wrote the screenplay for Clint Eastwood's Sully, which was starring Tom Hanks. So he's a big deal in Hollywood. He was able to get this to Clint Eastwood's editor and to get the cinematographer who did Gladiator, who's done a bunch of Marvel movies. I mean, this is a big deal film. It was shot in Ireland and in Belgium. and it's gorgeous, it's powerful. And listen, let's just talk about the fact that we have anti-Semitism on the rise in the world. We've never seen it. I mean, all these years we're like, oh yeah, that's in the past. No, since October 7th, over a year ago, this is the right time for this film to come out. And all these years I was hoping it's going to come out this year, this year, this year, this year. We always said, but we want it to come out in the Lord's timing.
Yes.
And it came out right when anti-Semitism is on the rise. So it's terrific. I think I was going to forget. I think people can get discounted tickets if they go to angel.com/Eric. That's my name or whatever. But if you go to angel.com/Eric, you can get tickets that are 33% off the regular ticket price. It's in about 2,000 theaters around the country. It is a major release. It's a big deal. And I want to say again, like, it's important people see it this weekend.
Yes.
So
and we will be, this will be airing our interview, which is rare, tomorrow. It'll be at 7 p.m. Central on my podcast, Spotify, and of course Salem. But also, folks, it is crucial that you go and you support it. There's different ways to protest. And one of the ways that Christians, seems like, at least in the US, have tried to utilize is getting the placard, standing in front of the building, standing in front of the thing, waving the placard, yelling and screaming. Not always. Obviously, sometimes we're sweet and kind about it, but nevertheless, we got our little poster up to say, this is bad, this is good, this is not something that you should involve yourself with. And that's a protest, but it's kind of a negative protest, right? It's kind of a protest aggressively. I think there's another way to protest that I think is more effective, and that is, why don't you invest in something you believe in? Why don't you go see something? Why don't you take money out of your pocket and put it down? Because it's a vote. When you buy a ticket, you are voting, this is worth my time, my effort, and the material is important. The other thing that you Christians need to understand is this: when you go to a movie like this and make it successful, people will look at that, especially production companies, and go, maybe we should make more movies like this. I guess there's money here. I don't care why they make them. As long as Jesus is lifted up, I'll take Satan's money all day long and make Jesus movies, because God takes what Satan means.
No, that's gonna happen with this film. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And I'll also tell you, the people who see it this weekend, when they see it, they're gonna think, oh, I gotta bring so-and-so. I gotta tell so-and-so. Like, it's that kind of a film where you're gonna be like, I gotta tell so-and-so. Because again, if people know me, they know I don't blow smoke on this stuff. Like, I'm thrilled to death that this film is so great, because over the years, you hear they're making a film, you don't know what's it going to be like. And there's a lot of average films, it's just really powerful. And here's the other thing. It's a true story. It's not just a film. It's a true story. If you want the details, you can read my Bonhoeffer book. There's a lot of crazy, crazy details. It's a true story. And so, it's kind of exciting.
No, that's crucial. And I think that we will continue to support this film. We'll continue to speak about it. I mean, I think that one of the things that is necessary, I believe, in the church, in this whatever this is, this new administration, whatever, if it's a window, if it's grace, if it's mercy, if it's a reprieve, when I had Carol Swain on, she said, this is a reprieve, of somebody
we
coming.
don't deserve.
Well,
America should be dead.
Yeah.
Just like Donald Trump should be dead, bullet in his head.
Yeah.
America should be dead, bullet in our head, over. But God, in his mercy, dramatically saved us for his purposes. He has plans for this country, and people, we need to get in the game, and we need to understand God has given us a reprieve. Now we got to get busy. Now we get to get busy.
Well, in one way that
we wouldn't have been able to do anything.
One way, it's almost unbelievable. I mean, it's almost like I was hoping and praying that God would do that, but when it happened, it was almost like, I don't want to say I couldn't believe it, as much as I was humbled, Eric. I was like, we don't deserve this.
Brad, I'm totally with you. I mean, I knew that Trump would win. Like, I just knew, because for various reasons, the way God speaks, the way, he takes a bullet in the ear and there's blood and he lives. And that was the Lord's way of saying, okay, you see what's going on here? You see this? But when he won, I couldn't believe it. I said, I can't believe it's, for the last 4 years have been a nightmare of evil, a parade of evil like we've never seen. And most people don't care. Listen, you get like nutcases like Christianity Today saying we should not vote or vote for Kamala Harris. Like, that's how insane people are. That's how insane, quote unquote, some evangelical Christians are. And God gave us the victory. There's a holy remnant, Brad. There's a remnant of people who care. There's a remnant of people who say, what can I do? I want to fight for this country. God gave us this country for his eternal purposes. It's not about us. This is an exciting time. I want to tell my brothers and sisters, feel free to dream. The Lord has called us to this hour just to see big things. When you get a coalition with Elon Musk, can you even believe we're saying this? Are we making this up?
I
We're
can't
making it up. Elon
believe
Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr. Are you kidding me?
It talk about God's sovereignty and his at a whim can say, do you guys don't dream big enough? Do you want to know what I can do? Are you ready for this? Get a load of this. As we watched our institutions collapse, every university controlled by progressive Marxist, evil, cancerous, despicable ideologues, despicable, who butcher and mutilate children and say that that's affirming care, who kill children out of the womb as a sacrifice to the God of I want to have sex and have no repercussion. The evil of this ideology. And there was no justice, Eric. That's what was the hardest thing for me to slog through, is not that we've been in a fight, in a battle, and pain. That's hard enough. But it was as though there's never justice. Nobody ever pays the price for this stuff. And without justice, there is no balance, and there is nothing but anarchy. God is a God of balance, of peace, of justice, that their scales are balanced, and they were so out of touch. And so I felt like they got them all. They won the long march through the institutions. They won. They got the university. They got the school system. They got the IRS. They got the WEF. They got the CDC. They got the secret services. They have the FBI, the police force of the United States of America. They're getting the military. They've got. I mean, they took it all. And God says, just to let you know, how would you like the richest man in the whole wide world? I'll give you that guy. And then he's going to buy X, and he's going to let people know what's really going on. And then RFK, of the legacy of the Kennedy, he's going to flip parties and he's going to join in. And then we're going to have Tulsi Gabbard, who jumped parties, and she jumps. And then we got Matt Gaetz. And I mean, it's almost like God is just.
That I interviewed RFK Jr. for Socrates in the City?
Yeah.
I interviewed him back in June. This is when he was 100% running for president, not even slightly interested in working with Trump. And in my interview, people can go to SocratesInTheCity.com. You can watch it. My intro is insane. You know, like, I can do comedy sometimes. It's nuts. And at the end of the interview, I said, Bobby, if, on the off chance that you do not make it into the White House, would you consider serving your country in a Trump administration? And he kind of hemmed and hawed, and basically Trump had offered him a job in 2016. He said yes, and then had reneged on it. And that really made him angry. And, he was humiliated because all his liberal buddies were like, oh, I told you, why did you go with Trump? And so he kind of made it sound in the interview with me like, nah, no thanks. And I said to him, listen, your country's at stake. You got to think about that. I really pushed him. And 2 months later, boom, somehow Trump reaches out to him and he says, yes.
Mm.
What a miracle. We're going to have this guy who knows the evil of our health system, who knows the evil of the FDA, who knows where the bodies are buried. He's going to go scorched earth on these guys. It's going to be their worst nightmare. Same thing with Pete Hegseth. It's going to go scorched earth on the satanic woke Pentagon. This is an amazing moment. This is an amazing, I mean, even that word doesn't do it justice. This is a miraculous moment in American history. This is an astonishing
I mean,
in
I
American
literally,
history. We need to
he,
praise God for
yeah.
this.
But here's the thing, Eric, you and I have sat and talked about these things personally, just you and I, trying to figure out what has happened to our nation and where's our freedoms and our liberties and what does it mean to be an American, and patriotism and just standing for truth and at least having access to the table of ideas like everybody else as a conservative or a Christian or a patriot or whatever you want to call it. And we just sort of, it's like for so long we've looked at each other going, it seems as though we've been abandoned. It's like God has must said, I'm done with you guys. That's what is so odd to me. It's not just that he won, but all these other coalition of people coming in and saying, we want to participate. And if they do what they say, if they do go scorched earth, it will change everything. It's like we're
That's what I'm saying. We
like
didn't think this was possible. We didn't think in our lifetime we could see anything this wonderful.
not this,
And
this
I'm
is
here to
over the
say
top.
it's
This is
happening.
over
It's
the top
happening.
victory.
Well, it's kind of like going to the moon. When it happened, you're like, did we went to the moon? Like, did we do this? And I think after that, like people of your generation and my generation, our generation, we kind of forgot that it's possible. We thought, oh, we're in managed decline, like it's never gonna, maybe we'll get like a little blip in the Reagan years, Morning in America, but nah. And I'm here to say that was not God's plan. God's plan is for Americans to get healthy, to stop eating junk and to get healthy. And for the medical establishment to be honest and whatever. For the military to be something that young people want to join up because they believe in it, and on and on and on and on. And that is by God's grace, under the leadership of Donald Trump, we're going to get there. And we're in a war. They're going to fight. They're going to fight. You're going to have liberal rhino senators and jugheads like Karl Rove on Fox News. And, you're going to get guys like that who are like, well, I don't know if they should appoint, Matt Gaetz. There's some questions, blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you about Matt Gaetz. He's such a warrior. They're scared to death. They're scared to death. He is overqualified. And that's why they got to say, oh, he's not qualified. He's qualified because he's a man of courage and he's a warrior. And the American people voted for that. When we voted for Donald Trump, we're like, we want more of that. Can you find anybody like you, Donald Trump, who's going to go scorched earth on these wicked people that have harmed Americans and have harmed people around the world, not just Americans, by their policies? Can you find people like that? And he found one after the other. Tom Homan, who's going to be the border czar. Wow. It's going to be unbelievable. Praise God. We don't deserve this.
And it happens so fast. His appointments happen so fast. It's almost like this was always prepared, like it was always ready. We just need to move to 2024 for the election, and then we're going to lock it in. Well, I'll tell you what, we're here to obviously to talk about our country and our nation and our faith, because that's our sphere of influence and it's crucial. But I want to talk about the film as well, as we've launched with that whole idea, and we're going to talk more about it. But one of the things that I do want to not lose opportunity to discuss just briefly, because I know you've done it to death, but nevertheless, you wrote this Bonhoeffer book, and you went out on tour and talked about it over and over again. But here's the thing: we got a movie now, and you've told people how great it is, and I'm sure it is, and how they must see it. And I would like to encourage my brothers and sisters out there, by the way, to look at this as a movement. I got an idea. Instead of inviting somebody to go with you, why don't you go buy 4 tickets and take 2 people? Say, I'm going to take you out to dinner. I'm going to take you to a movie. Just do that. You just bought 4 tickets in one pop, and it's a missionary journey to somebody's soul. I saw the girl, I forgot her name, but she was on Big Bang Theory. Mayim
Bialik.
Holy
smoke.
My gosh. Did she give you guys a huge shout out?
Something, I have not seen it. Somebody told me about it, and I was like, that is amazing. She was going to be one of the hosts of Jeopardy. She was on Big Bang Theory. And she's, of course, Jewish.
Yeah.
And she somehow saw the film and raved about it, but I have not seen the exact blurb.
Yeah. She went
That's
on
what I'm
and on
saying.
about
It's the
there's just,
mainstream
yeah.
movie. It's going to hit all kinds of people. And, honestly, I say this to Christians, this is the evangelistic opportunity you've been waiting for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine being able to take anybody to a film, and when they go to the film, they're going to love the film, and it's going to get them thinking about all the stuff that you wish they would begin thinking about. That's what the film does. You're going to be thinking about God. You're going to be thinking about good and evil. And what would I do if evil comes? Will I stand? And I mean, it is amazing. And
Well,
it's an indictment
and the
of
other
the
thing,
dead, of the dead church, of
oh,
those people who go to church who don't want to be bothered standing against evil. And so it's really, yeah, it's
well,
powerful.
and we talk about just the whole idea of how so many of the films in the past haven't been that great quality and whatever. And a lot of them were like, whatever, Left Behind and kind of apocalyptic stuff and future
Yeah.
this, or the tied all up in a ribbon Christian movie where the cancer always is healed, the girl always comes back, the touchdown is always made, instead of the angst and the difficulty and challenges of actual life, where sometimes the greatest lesson is enduring the pain and as an honor to Christ who did it first. And this part of Christianity is so neglected. So I want to do this, Eric, just for a few minutes.
Yeah.
You've told about how great this movie is, and it is, and we're going to get people to see it, that I guarantee you. But let's tell them a little bit about this guy that they are about to see. Let's tell them why this man matters, because that's the thing about this movie. Like you said, this really happened. This guy that's about to inspire you, it's not a fantasy. It's not a fictional inspiration. It's not a myth. This man really did these things against Hitler, of all people. So I want to go back in time just for a second. 2008,
Yeah.
I call my friend up. I call my old buddy Eric Metaxas up. And for those who don't know Eric and aren't privy to his cell number, he was never really good at picking up his phone. That's not his thing. Texting bothered him immensely. Emails were better. He said, please don't, I thank you. I have a phone, but don't use it. Don't call me or text me on it, because I'd rather have an email. So why you had it, nobody knows. But some reason, fate intervened, and you picked up the phone. And you were talking to me about, it might have been earlier because you were writing Bonhoeffer. Let's just put it there. So maybe that was 2007. I don't know. Eric, you were so in such angst. You were in such despair. I almost want, I don't want it to come out as a soundbite, almost like you were suicidal. Something was so grieving you, and it was so heavy and painful. And you were just said, Brad, I don't know how I'm going to get through this thing. I can't. It was like it was crushing you.
I will tell you, I wrote about it. I wrote a book called Miracles, and I wrote about this episode a little bit in my book, Miracles. That was probably the lowest time of my life. I will never forget it. It was horrible. It was horrible. The bottom line is that I was writing the book, so it had to be 2008. I was writing the book, and the publisher, I ended up switching publishers. The first publisher flat out screwed me on a level that I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I had killed myself writing this book. And the whole idea was to get it out on a certain date, because there was a Tom Cruise film coming out about the Bonhoeffer, the Valkyrie plot and whatever. I just killed myself to get the book out. And the publisher basically said, yeah, well, we can't get it out by then. Yeah, we can't. And it was like, that was the whole reason I almost killed myself writing the book. I'm killing myself to get this thing done, working like I've never worked in my life. And I hope I never come close to that again. It was awful. So when I got that news, it was honestly, it was so devastating. I didn't know where to turn. It's like where you just go, Lord, I don't get it. And my wife, of course, is saying like, well, Eric, you got to trust the Lord, and you got to, like, telling me all this stuff that's true. But in the natural, I could not It was so horrible. And there's more to the story, but I'll say this. The Lord had spoken to me in a dream. This has only happened to me twice in my life. Once when I got saved miraculously. The second time was when I started writing the Bonhoeffer book. And without going into the details, the Lord made it miraculously clear. I mean, miraculously clear that his hand was on this book. That's all I had to go on. So when I went through this dark period, I was like, the only thing I can cling to is the Lord made it super clear to me, miraculously clear. Somehow his hand is on this book. And what I didn't know then was that the book would come out and it would become by far the biggest bestseller. Like I haven't had anything come close to it. It sold over 1 million copies. It's been translated into 20 languages. And now it's inspired a huge $29 million feature film.
Yeah.
And it has touched people. I mean, people come up to me to this day and say, oh, Eric, your book changed my life. I've written 15 books. I don't need to ask them which one. And so the fact that we were friends then, I remember that phone call, I was in such agony, Brad, I'll never forget it. But sometimes the Lord allows us to go through stuff like that. He wants to show us who he is.
Yes.
And I look back on that now and I think, Lord, you knew what you were doing. And I was unable really even to, this is where you feel a little bit ashamed. Like I should have been able to praise the Lord in that moment, but I was just so broken. I mean, I've dealt with depression, as an adult. I was so broken and it was so terrible. So now to have it come out, and of course, just as when the book came out, there are people that, they're politically and theologically liberal, and they're full of hate. They hated my book, man. They hated that it was selling so well because they write books on Bonhoeffer that are real bummers that nobody reads and stuff. So there's jealousy and anger and nasty, but I've never confronted the nastiness before. Like this was the first time in my life. And it's happening again with the movie. Like I mentioned, Christianity Today has this insane review. It's almost funny. I mean, it is funny because they're grasping at straws. Like they basically say that, in the film, the poster, so the movie poster, Angel Studios, they're the distributor. Of course, they want to make it look like it's a sexy spy thriller. So it says Bonhoeffer, assassin or whatever, right? So he's got a gun in his hand in the poster. And they're like, ooh, it's like they're inspiring Christian nationalism, political violence. So it's happening all over again. The lunatics are coming out of the woodwork trying to squash it. So if there's yet another reason to go see the film, is just to tell those people, sorry, we're not going to let you, harsh or mellow. Excuse me, we're not going to let you do that. It's a great film. And honestly, the folks who made this film, they're going to get awards. They're going to get awards because you don't have a film about faith where Jesus is at the center of the film. That's a mainstream film. So people who hate Jesus, just like when The Passion of the Christ came out, nasty, nasty reviews. I mean, I remember the nastiness of the reviews, vicious. Not just nasty, vicious. And look how that film did because it glorified God. So I'm excited, but yeah, been a long road, man.
But hasn't, and you'd know better than anyone because you're an expert in Bonhoeffer. Hasn't the progressive Christians tried to co-opt Bonhoeffer for their own ideology?
That's why they're so mad.
Yeah,
that's why they're so angry. They basically hijacked Bonhoeffer before my book came out. They had kind of created this Bonhoeffer who was politically liberal, who was kind of agnostic. He was nothing like we are in terms of Christian faith in their mind. And then when I did the research for my book, I was like, wait a minute, this is a totally different Bonhoeffer than the one they're presenting. Yeah. They're making it like, oh, he's this liberal pacifist, he's this, that. No, you're like making a Bonhoeffer in your own image. So when my book came out, it enraged all those academics, all those theological liberals, because for 40 plus years, they had a good thing going with their version of this kind of like agnostic, humanist. In fact, I'll tell you what, around that time, Christopher Hitchens just came out with his awful book, God, It's Not Great or whatever. And he was on Charlie Rose. And Charlie Rose said to him, well, you say that there's no great, people of faith. But he goes, what about Bonhoeffer? Charlie Rose. And no kidding, Christopher Hitchens on that program, he says, oh, Bonhoeffer was not a Christian. He was a humanist. So in other words, according to these liberals, oh yeah, he was a humanist. He was not like a real Christian like we are, believing in Jesus and believing in the cross and all this stuff. No. So those theological liberals, agnostics, whatever they are, hateful progressives, they were humiliated when my book came out. And then when it did so well, they were really humiliated. So the knives came out. So those same people are kind of circling the wagons again. They're like, we got to get this. We got to crush this film, you know? So they're writing this nasty stuff. And I think there's something funny about it, because I'm telling you that here's the irony, Brad. This is what's so funny. Your average liberal, if they see this movie, they're going to love it. Like they're going to love it. So it's only people that are kind of in the know. They're like, no, we got to crush it. So good luck to them. I think the film is so good that people are just going to want to see it.
Well, let me ask you this. You've authored how many books now?
At least 16.
Okay. So that's not a world that, I mean, I've written 2 books, but obviously not even close to your scale and not to your sophistication. My books were humorous with hopefully some insight, but it's not easy to do, to write a book. And I came up with ideas based on either my comedy and my perspective, or in the particular one, being a Christian without being an idiot. It was just this idea of how we kind of presuppose ideas of Christ or our faith as a tradition without it necessarily having biblical precedent. And so that was kind of the concept of that. But, you've written such an eclectic group, 7 men, I think, 7 women, miracles, letter to the Christian church. I mean, pretty broad spectrum of perspectives of our faith. But I'm curious about, as an author, how does one even sort of stumble upon their subject matter? I mean, why Bonhoeffer had many books written about him prior to yours. It's almost like, another one? Do we need another one? What would even have prompted you to choose this man? There must have been something, especially in retrospect, something significant and sovereign about you deciding to take on this guy, who you said you didn't even know that much about anyways initially.
Well, I think the short answer is the Lord led me to it. And I will even go farther and say that I now have no doubt that the Lord created me in my mother's womb to write this book. I'm not exaggerating. I don't say that kind of stuff lightly. I have no doubt about it. Just so people have some sense of why I say that, my mother, who I talked to a couple hours ago, she's 90. She grew up in Nazi Germany. Her dad was killed in the war. He was 31 years old. She was 10. She lost her father when she was 10. My mother lived through this. My family lived through this. My grandmother lost her husband. My grandmother was one of my favorite people in the world. This was personal for me. What happened in Germany in the 30s and 40s, that's my family. A lot of people don't know this. They say, oh, I thought you were Greek. My dad's Greek from Greece. My mom's German from Germany. They met in an English class in New York City in 1956. So my mother has a German accent. My father had a Greek accent, and I was raised in a working class European immigrant home. And this was a personal story for me. So when my buddy, Ed Tuttle, the man who led me to faith in Jesus, I remember 1988, he gives me a copy of Bonhoeffer's Cause of Discipleship because, you know about Bonhoeffer? You ever heard about Bonhoeffer? I said, no. Who's Bonhoeffer? What? And he says, oh, he's a German pastor who got involved in the plot against Hitler. He spoke up for the Jews because of his Christian faith. I thought, what? This is insane. Are you serious? This is real? I've never heard this. I could get involved in that kind of Christianity. I want to hear about this. So that was part of my faith journey. And so I never dreamt I would write a book about Bonhoeffer. But, the Lord kind of tricked me into writing about Wilberforce. I wrote my book, Amazing Grace. Never thought I'd write any biography, but I wrote Amazing Grace about Wilberforce. And then I thought, who would, if I ever wrote another biography, there's only one other person I could think of that would rise to the level of William Wilberforce, who because of his Christian faith, spoke up for the African slaves. That would be Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who spoke up for the Jews of Europe. So I kind of thought about it, and I thought maybe. And then the funny thing is, you do your market research, you're like, well, Bonhoeffer's story is kind of amazing, but what books have been written about him? And you look around. So I remember, in 2007 or whatever, looking around like, what's out there on Bonhoeffer? And I can say really bluntly, nothing great, nothing, because I looked at everything. In fact, the best book on him was written by his best friend, but it was an 1,100-page 5-pound paperback brick. It was like a reference work that's pretty unreadable. I mean, it is unreadable. So it's an amazing reference work. And without that book, I wouldn't have been able to write my book. But there was no book that you could give to a friend and go like, this is an amazing story. Read this. None. And I thought, I need to try to write that book and tell the story in a way that's compelling and fun and beautiful and true, because that's all true. So that's what made me say, okay, I'll take a crack at it. But I didn't know, how does this end? Does he end up like all these agnostic progressive have portrayed him, that he kind of drifts off into this ethical humanism or whatever? I said, if he does, he does. I got to tell the truth. And I did the research and I really couldn't believe it. I thought just the opposite. They've been lying about him for 50 years. They've kind of like pretended like, oh no, he's our guy. He's just like us. No, he's not. No, he's not. And I think the other reason that they're so angry is that I quote his letters. I quote his diaries to his friends, letters to his friends and family and his diary and stuff. So it's his words. And you start seeing this is an incredible man of God, an incredible man of faith. And they say, oh, Eric wants to portray him as an American evangelical, and it's like, well, yeah, he was closer to an American evangelical than he is to you. Like, he actually loved Jesus. He loved Jesus. He didn't just talk about Jesus. He loved Jesus. I mean, it's such a beautiful portrait of a Christian saint that I just said, if I can write that book. So I wrote the book. And as I said, it was like, I never dreamt. And I mean, I'm not exaggerating. You know me. I didn't expect it to be a bestseller. No, I didn't. We were really struggling financially, really bitterly. Trying to be a writer, living in New York was hard. And God just blessed this book. And next thing I know, everybody's like talking about it. Chuck Colson is telling me how much he loves it. I thought, wait a minute, what's going on? So God blessed it and God used it. And it is clearly God's timing that it comes out as a movie now. It is clear. And obviously I hope people will buy my book and read my book, because I want people to know the details. In a movie, you can only get a slice. I mean, in the movie, it does, for example, the movie does not get into his love affair. I mean, he gets engaged. It's such a beautiful, beautiful story. I mean, obviously that's in my book in detail. In the movie, they can't get into that, because it's a movie. You can only get into a couple of things, and then, and so it's such a beautiful thing. I did a course for Jordan Peterson's Peterson Academy. That'll be coming out, I don't know, within a month or something like that. 8-hour course on Bonhoeffer. When people find out who this man was, it will inspire them in their faith. And that's what's so cool. And I believe, just to get to where we were talking about before, I believe God has ordained revival for America, that there are all kinds of people that are not interested. They're going to get interested in God because of Bonhoeffer, because of the movie. Something is happening in this country. And I think this movie is a big part of it. So, I just praise God. And I know I didn't make it happen. I'm not being falsely humble. I know the Lord did this. So, it's good.
Did you discover anything about him that you hadn't seen before? Like
Yeah.
Was there something unique that you came across perhaps that had been overlooked?
Yeah, there are a bunch of things actually. And one of the most significant ones was this really creepy Bonhoeffer book came out, I don't know, like about 7 years ago, basically saying like he was gay. And I like howled, because I was like, I read the book and it's bad. I mean, it's bad. There's got a film coming out saying Lincoln is gay. Like, yeah, everybody's gay. But the point is, when I wrote my book, I kind of thought, like, did he have any love life? Was there a woman in his life besides the woman that he gets engaged to? And I went to Germany in 2008 with my wife, Suzanne, and we visited his niece, who's in the book. This is the wife, the widow of Eberhard Bethge, his best friend. It's his sister's daughter. We visited her. We spent time with her. She knew Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And enough time had passed, because nobody else wrote about this woman, Elizabeth Zinn, because it was kind of like too close to write. They didn't want to like bring her into it. But in 2008, I asked Eberhard Bethge's widow, and this is in my book. I wrote a new introduction to the book where I get into the details. But in 2008, I asked her, I said, was there anybody in Dietrich Bonhoeffer's life, like a woman in his life? And she says, oh, yes. I said, can you tell me more? She goes, yes, it was Elizabeth Zinn. I said, what? I never heard that name. I never read that name. I've read every book on Bonhoeffer, never heard the name. And then I did more research, and this is someone that he was, kind of like in his polite way, dating for like 8 years, going to concerts and operas and things, whatever. And eventually he writes her a letter, and I quote the letter in my book, where he basically, they realized this is actually, it was 1936 where he wrote the letter to Elizabeth Zinn, basically telling her he's so involved in this calling that God has on his life that marriage is not in the cards for him. He's just going to serve God, And so 5-6 years after that, he meets the woman that he gets engaged to. But at this point, so all of that stuff, that's like adding to Bonhoeffer studies, because nobody knew about this. Nobody mentioned this. Nobody. So that was a cool thing. There are a few other things, but that's the one that kind of sticks out.
So because we are trying to sort of entice people to go out this weekend, see this movie, and they will, and they should, because God told me to tell you that he will send locusts if you don't. But other than that, risk you're running. But let's tell them, let's give them a little spoiler to intrigue them, because maybe they don't know about Bonhoeffer, or they have a cursory idea.
No.
So why don't we, we only have, I don't know how much time you have. We're getting closer to an hour here. If you have a little bit more time after that, so be it. But
no, there's one thing I gotta say, because we're talking, a lot of people don't know anything about Bonhoeffer. I'll say this. Bonhoeffer was a German pastor, an incredible man of God, young man. In 1930, he's 24 years old. He goes to New York for 1 year. And when he's in New York, his life changes because he visits a Black church in Harlem. And he sees a kind of Christian faith that he has never seen before in these sort of like buttoned up Lutheran church that he go to in Germany and whatever. It's all like religious and liturgy and whatever. He sees this full-throated, emotional faith, people loving Jesus, people being emotional, people talking about the Bible. And it was this kind of evangelical expression of faith. He'd never seen this before. It changed his life. He goes back. Now, this is in the film. It's really cool. He meets at Union Theological Seminary. He meets a Black fellow student, becomes his friend, Frank Fisher from Alabama, who introduces him to the Black world of Harlem and to this church, and it totally changes his life. That's the linchpin, or I should say that's the hinge in the film, where you say something happens in his life. That is 100% true. If you read my book, I corroborate that 100%. That's the thing that God did in New York City to Bonhoeffer to kind of change his heart about what church could be like, what Christian faith could look like, and how you need to stand up if the government is coming after a group of people, or if people are treated poorly, how it's the job of the church to stand up. So he sees that the Blacks, now he goes back home, the Nazis are rising, they're doing it to the Jews. He makes the connection. So his whole life from that point on is a different kind of life. So that's what I'm saying. Like, most people don't know, Bonhoeffer was in Harlem. Bonhoeffer's hanging out with Black people in Harlem. He traveled with them to the South. He saw the Jim Crow stuff. He was like, that's all real. And most people don't know that about him. So it's kind of cool that they put it in the film.
Well, and the thing that, if you want to take this to the to the zenith of the idea of being a Christian proactive in culture and trying to, I guess, commit to what you consider the moral high ground. What is the most important thing we can do as believers, other than try to redeem the culture through Christ? And of course, that's something we don't do anyways. We just put the information out, but the Holy Spirit does that. But nevertheless, we are asked to bring the world back to Eden. We'll never get there, but we're supposed to try. In other words, we're supposed to repair what we destroyed, through Christ, right? So I said this earlier, it's going to be a bit of a spoiler. It's kind of not, because we know they're going to know that it was unsuccessful. But if we're going to kind of do a little teaser for folks that are listening who maybe haven't known much about it, they need to know that this pastor, this German pastor who went to New York and watched a black church and said, wow, it can be a whole different thing, and could have stayed in New York and decided to go be with his people in Germany, though he knew this was going to put his life on the line. But it's very difficult, Eric, to try to understand the idea that he said to himself and got involved with a group of people who said, we have to kill Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
Now, you want to talk about should there be the Christians not involving themselves in politics? I don't know how much deeper you can get than an assassination attempt against Adolf Hitler that a pastor was involved with. And so in some ways it's a spoiler, but it's not, because obviously he wasn't assassinated, so it didn't
Well,
pan
I'm
out.
not gonna get into I don't want to get into the details, and because it's about an hour,
No, but I
tired.
clear that. I understand. But what I'm getting at is we're trying to entice people to find something they probably didn't know, that is, you should know about this guy,
Yeah.
because it applies to where we'll end up this interview, which is, how do we affect our culture? How much are we supposed to be unapologetic and vigorous in inculcating our faith into this culture, because we're not ashamed of it. It's true. So I'm not going to not talk about what is true about this, whatever that costs and whatever it takes. So just in a brief sense, how in the world can you justify, I'm going to kill Hitler?
Well, no kidding, because I've spoken about Bonhoeffer like literally, a couple hundred times.
Right.
There's no short way to answer that. It is complicated. One thing I will tell you is he doesn't just go like, nah, I'm tired of this Christian stuff. I'm just gonna, kill Hitler. No. He is so thoughtful that it's unbelievable. He was now, people will get this from my book more than they will from the movie, because I go in depth in my book to really carry through how he was reasoning and how it took time. He was not just like, yeah, no, he was like really, constantly changing and thinking and processing, but he was very careful and brilliant. But that's the challenge. I'll just leave it there, because I think that people need to be challenged to think more deeply. And I wrote a sequel. I mean, I wrote the Bonhoeffer book, but I wrote a book called Letter to the American Church. And I wrote a book called Religionless Christianity, where I kind of get into this stuff. Like, let's think about this stuff. Let's think, how does it apply today? But I think the Bonhoeffer story will whet people's appetites. Like, let's think a little more deeply about this. Let's not be cavalier, because we're all tempted to be, religious and cavalier. Like, here's the answer, and let's move on. No,
Well, but you know what,
tough.
Eric,
Tough.
it's not like it's unprecedented. The black robed regiment that started this nation were pastors that spoke of Christ in justice and truth and what was right and what was the expectation of a Christian. And then they would take their robes off and grab their musket and take their men and go fight and shoot people. So the idea of just war theory and Augustine, and the idea that how do Christians have to engage, even when it comes to moral warfare, is something that no one has ever taken lightly. How could you? It seems the antithesis of Christianity, and that's why I was curious about the nuance and the depth of Christianity is lost on most American Christians. They're
Right.
so myopic
Well,
and
because
so
you just want an easy answer.
Yeah.
And there's the answer. I mean, David killed Goliath.
Yeah. And cut his head off.
He didn't murder Goliath, right? The scripture says, thou shalt do no murder, but it doesn't say that you can't kill. Sometimes, as when David killed Goliath, as when people do in war, whatever, or a sniper takes out somebody. I mean, Bonhoeffer famously asked the question, if somebody's driving a car down a main street, killing pedestrians left and right, innocents, killing, do I have an obligation, if I have a gun, to stop him, to shoot him? That's where you really get into it. And that's why Bonhoeffer, with his brilliant theological mind, he takes us into thinking, can you think more deeply about what God would have you do? And he doesn't just think about it, he does it. So yeah, it's one of the great stories of the 20th century, frankly.
Well, and of course, you guys can get a depth of that in your book. That will be re-energized, I'm guessing, with this film. And I'm guessing it's indicated in the film as well. I know you'd miss that part. That has to be a piece of this puzzle. Well, let's kind of try to wrap up here next few minutes in kind of a thumbnail observation if this is even possible. But I wanted to find some parallels because to me, the most important thing about Bonhoeffer and what caused people to be, I think, re-engaged with him in the last few years, especially with your book, was looking at America and saying, this is exactly what these people, can this be, because it wasn't that long ago, 1939. And yet we almost read it like it was mythology, like it was something that happened in a far, far away land with odd people that really didn't have the courage and the understanding to see what was at stake. But, we've learned this mythical fable now, and we certainly would do better. And we're Americans. We'd never do that in the first place. Come to find out, these were people that, like you said, are still alive, who went through this thing and said, you don't get it. By the time it's on you, it's too late. You are engulfed by this thing, and it's way bigger machine than you are, my friend. So show me 1939 Germany, United States 2024, or the last few years, quickly. What were some similarities between those two moments?
I've only got a couple of minutes left before I have to go, so let me just I'll sum up. Where we are now is 1933 Germany.
Okay.
If the church had stood up in 1933, and you get this from my book, you don't get it so much from the movie because the movie has to kind of mush together the timing. But in my book, you see clearly Bonhoeffer knows as soon as Hitler takes power, the church has a moment of opportunity, like a year and a half, to stand against the evil. And if they do, they can defeat the evil. But if they don't, they open the door to hell on earth. They opened the door to hell on earth, and everything that followed, 35, 36, whatever, that was because the church failed to do what God was calling it to do through prophetic voices like Dietrich Bonhoeffer. In this country, my friend, I've been saying this for the last 2 years nonstop, everywhere I go, talking about my book, Letter to the American Church. And by the grace of God, enough people got it that we stood up and we reelected Donald Trump. We now have the privilege of crossing the starting line in the fight to get our country back. If we had not done that, it's over. And so the parallels are as dramatic as can be, but I do not believe it's the Lord's will to let us go down the path Germany did. And it's one of the reasons I've been screaming and shouting and talking and writing for the last few years, because I see the parallels with the Bonhoeffer story. So once people see the Bonhoeffer story in the film, they're going to start thinking, oh, okay, I think I get it. I think I get it. And then we got to link arms and we got to fight for God's purposes in our generation. It's a privilege we get to do so. The Germans who woke up in 1936, 37, they're like, oh, we see what's happening. It was too late. For us, by the grace of the Lord, it's not too late. So we need to get busy.
So in closing, and you and I have talked about this in private for a long time, a couple believers, just knuckleheads trying to figure this out. But we have our own little way of communicating to the masses, and God gives us that privilege for whatever reason. But one thing for sure, I think the world or the United States in this last election has proven, and what we all have endured more than anything, and it's so treacherous, is just the loss of believing in anybody anymore, that we don't trust the media, we don't trust voting, we don't trust our institutions, we don't trust the political system. And the truth is, why would they? They are so corrupt. What came out during Corona and the things that were exposed at that point, and the World Economic Forum and the groups that are helping to pull the levers of this nation and steal our liberties and freedoms, we don't know who to trust anymore. And I've seen such corruption from the Republicans and the Democrats equally, that it's so disgusting, despicable that you almost want to throw your hands up and say, screw all you people. You're all demons. But we have to fight. And so here we sit with this moment. You have been given access, and I think building some sort of potential little relationship with Donald Trump, or whatever, in whatever way that is, whatever connection that is. Maybe it's through his people. I know you've met him, you've interviewed him, I think. So I'm just going to ask you this, Eric, and I trust you, and you're a man of God, and you have the Holy Spirit of the living God inside you, and he will give you insight and wisdom, and he will expose red flags and false doctrines quickly. I don't know who Donald Trump is. I know what he says he wants to do and what he says he wants to stand for. He's a charismatic leader. So was Hitler. He's a man that people gravitate to and find compelling. But I only say Hitler to say, those guys can be equally evil too. I think Trump's a good guy. I'm trusting that everything he says he's going to try to do. I don't know if he's a believer. I pray every day he becomes to know Jesus Christ as a savior and admits it and humbles himself. That's one thing that dude could use, is some humbling. That his humility hasn't been his strength. But I'm just going to ask you, even though it's you and me, but the whole world's watching. Is Donald Trump the real deal? Can we trust him?
100% yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's easy. That is easy. I've seen enough to say emphatically, yeah. And by the way, if that changes, I'll come on the show and I'll say I was wrong. But no, I've seen he's the real deal. Thank God he's the real deal. Yeah.
Well,
forgive me, I have to go.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for the time. But this is an exciting time, Brad. It's an exciting time. This movie is just part of it. Something is happening in America. And so, as I started, I hope people will see the film this weekend. Please don't, folks. I cannot say it enough. Please don't wait. Tell your friends. And,
well, we are going to push this out tomorrow and get it out social to try to drive people to do it. And for those of you who are listening on Spotify or Salem, please go, bring a friend, buy extra tickets, just drag them along with you. And for those who are watching on YouTube and Instagram or Rumble, watching the show, this will end with a photo of me at Flossenburg concentration camp, where Dietrich Bonhoeffer was martyred, where he was hung and killed. And I got to visit that hallowed ground a number of years ago myself. So it kind of came full circle. It made me think of you when I was there, and grateful to be there. Folks, this is Eric Metaxas. His book, Bonhoeffer, you should get and read. See the movie, see it this weekend, and tell people and show up. And let's just make a movement of Christians who are finally going to do whatever is necessary to lift up God, lift up good product, lift up films, lift up books, lift up everything that honors Christ. If they ever say you're politically incorrect, I always tell them, thank you for the compliment. Nothing could be greater than to be a truth teller in the lies that have destroyed this nation in the West. Let's take it back and watch a third great awakening. And remember, I'm just a comic, but I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and that's just putting the woke back to sleep. I'll see you next Monday. Go see the movie Bonhoeffer this weekend. The end. Thank you, sir.
I don't know how many ways I had to tell you that I got to go. I really had to go like 10 minutes ago, so I got to go.
Okay, well, we're going. But hey, man, thanks so much for showing up, and you'll be on tomorrow.
Thanks for having me, and just post it and let me know how I can, if you put it on X or whatever, let me know. Okay.
Oh, we'll share the link and everything.
Okay.
Thank you, brother.
God bless you. Gotta
See
go.
ya.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right, buddy.